Hey genius! Welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling a big one, inflation. You hear about it on the news, you feel it at the grocery store, and you see it at the gas pump. Prices go up, and it feels like your money just doesn't stretch as far as it used to. But why? Why does this happen? Is it some mysterious force, or is there a real explanation? Well, stick around, because we're going to break down the complex world of inflation into simple, easy-to-understand pieces. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's going on with your money. So, what is inflation really? At its core, inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services is rising, and subsequently, the purchasing power of currency is falling. Think of it like this. If a coffee cost you $2 last year, and this year it costs $2.10, that 10-cent increase is inflation in action. Your $2 can't buy the exact same amount of coffee anymore. It's not just about one or two things getting more expensive. It's about a broad increase across the economy. Now, let's get into the why. The first major reason is something economists call demand pull inflation. This is a classic case of too much money chasing too few goods. Imagine everyone suddenly gets a big raise or a stimulus check. People feel wealthier and want to buy more stuff, more cars, more vacations, more gadgets. But the companies that make these things can't instantly produce more to meet this new, higher demand. When demand outstrips supply, sellers can, and do, raise prices. They know people are willing and able to pay more. This can create a cycle where higher demand leads to higher prices, which can then lead to workers demanding higher wages to keep up, further fueling the demand. It's a classic economic tug-of-war. The second key driver is cost-push inflation. This happens when it becomes more expensive for businesses to produce goods and services. Think about the journey of a simple t-shirt. It starts with cotton. If a drought ruins the cotton crop, the price of raw cotton goes up, then the cost to transport that cotton to the factory might increase because of higher fuel prices. The factory itself might face rising electricity bills. All these increased costs for raw materials, for energy, for labor get pushed onto the consumer in the form of a higher price for the final t-shirt. The business isn't necessarily being greedy. It's raising prices to protect its profit margins and simply stay in business. Supply chain disruptions, like we saw during the pandemic, are a perfect example of cost-push inflation. When ports get clogged and shipping becomes expensive and slow, the cost of almost everything that gets shipped goes up. There's another powerful player in this game, inflation expectations. This one is a bit more psychological. If everyone expects prices to rise in the future, they change their behavior today. As a consumer, you might rush out to buy that new laptop now because you're worried it will be more expensive in 6 months. As a worker, you'll demand a higher raise during your annual review to account for the anticipated increase in your cost of living. And businesses, expecting their own costs to rise, might raise their prices preemptively. When enough people act on this expectation, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The belief in future inflation actually creates inflation today. This is why central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the US, pay so much attention to managing public expectations. They want everyone to believe that inflation will remain low and stable. So, who's in charge of controlling this? Primarily, it's the country's central bank. Their main tool is adjusting interest rates. When they want to cool down inflation, they raise interest rates. This makes borrowing money more expensive for both consumers and businesses. If you have to pay a higher interest rate on a mortgage or a car loan, you might decide to wait. If a business has to pay more to borrow money for a new factory, they might postpone their expansion. This slowdown in borrowing and spending helps reduce the overall demand in the economy, which in turn helps bring prices down, or at least stops them from rising so fast. On the flip side, if the economy is too slow, they can lower interest rates to encourage borrowing and spending. It's a delicate balancing act. They want to control inflation without pushing the economy into a recession. Now, you might be thinking, is inflation always a bad thing? And the answer is, surprisingly, no. Most economists agree that a small, predictable amount of inflation, usually around 2% per year, is actually healthy for an economy. Why? A little bit of inflation encourages people to spend and invest their money, rather than hoarding it under the mattress. If you know your cash will be worth slightly less next year, you have an incentive to put it to work today. This keeps the economic engine humming. It also makes it easier for wages and prices to adjust. The real danger is not a little bit of inflation, but high, unpredictable inflation, or its opposite, deflation. Deflation is when prices are actually falling. That might sound great, but it can be disastrous for an economy. If people expect prices to be lower tomorrow, they'll stop buying things today. Why buy a new TV now if it's going to be cheaper next month? This can lead to a downward spiral of falling demand, falling production, and job losses. So, central banks aim for that Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, but just right. So, to recap, inflation is a complex issue driven by three main forces: too much demand, rising production costs, and our own expectations about the future. It's managed by central banks, primarily through the use of interest rates. And while runaway inflation can seriously erode our savings and standard of living, a small, stable amount is actually a sign of a dynamic and healthy economy. It's a fundamental concept that affects every single one of us, from our daily coffee purchase to our long-term retirement plans. Understanding it is the first step to navigating it successfully. I hope this breakdown made the concept of inflation a lot clearer for you. It's a topic that can seem intimidating, but at its heart, it's all about the simple relationship between supply, demand, and the value of our money. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about how the economy works, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next video. We'd love to hear your thoughts or questions in the comments below. See you in the next one.